maker of the polio vaccine, Jonas Salk, was once asked, who owns the patent for his newly discovered cure for millions of people? He responded, there is no patent. Could you patent the sun? He believed that medicine belonged to everyone. But today in the US, one drug costs as much as $4.25 million per injection. From 19th century snake oils to modern day multi-million dollar injections, the US drug industry has turned into big business. This is the 5-minute breakdown of the 10 factors that turned US drug prices into the highest in the world, ranked from least to greatest effect on high prices. Let's dive in. Number 10, direct-to-consumer advertising. In 1997, the FDA relaxed its grip on pharmaceutical marketing, making the US one of just 2 nations in the world where drug companies could pitch directly to you on your TV. So instead of just trusting doctors to prescribe a medication, many patients would go to their doctor and demand a medication that they saw on a pharmaceutical commercial. Number 9, the Orphan Drug Act. Now, the Orphan Drug Act was actually a pretty noble idea that just turned into a total corporate money play. Pharma companies realized that if they made a drug for a rare condition, they could effectively own the market with a government-backed monopoly. Today, some of the world's highest priced drugs are orphan drugs, sold to a tiny group of people for $500,000+ a year. Number 8, biologics and the regulatory moat. Modern medicine is slowly shifting towards something called biologics. These are complex drugs made with living cells rather than chemically made in a lab. And unlike chemical pills that cost pennies to make, a biologic can require a $200 million to $1 billion specialized factory just to start to make the drug. This creates a natural monopoly. Even when the patent expires, the barrier to entry is so high that generic alternatives, or what they call biosimilars, rarely drop the price by more than 50%. Whereas traditional chemical generics drop the price by 90%. Number 7, supply chain consolidation. Over the last few decades, the US health system has become vertically integrated. Insurance companies, pharmacies, and the middlemen who negotiate prices are often owned by the same massive corporations. You might have seen something about this in the news. It basically creates a setup where prices and negotiations are hidden, making it nearly impossible to trace where all the money we spend on drugs actually goes. Number 6, employer-based insurance dominance. Following World War II, the US system evolved so most people receive insurance through their jobs. This structure separates the patient from the full cost of care. Basically, when a patient only pays a small copay, they don't really feel the weight of a $5,000 bill, which allows drug makers to raise prices without facing the level of pushback seen in a typical market like gasoline or groceries. Number 5, patent system expansion. Since the year 1980, universities and private entities have been allowed to keep ownership of discoveries developed with government funding. While this sped up bringing drugs to market, it also created a paradox. Taxpayers often fund the initial high-risk science that makes the drug possible, only for a private company to patent it and then sell it back to those same taxpayers at a massive markup. Number 4, the Hatch-Waxman Act. The Hatch-Waxman Act created the system that allows cheaper, generic drugs to come to market. But it also gave pharma a playbook for something called evergreening. By making tiny, non-therapeutic changes right as a patent is about to expire, like maybe giving an old drug a new once-a-day coating, but not really changing anything inside the drug, companies can secure new patents and block cheap generics from entering the market for another 3 to 7 years. And quick note here, if evergreening doesn't work, they actually have a darker tactic: pay for delay. Big pharma companies literally pay generic competitors millions in cash to stay off the market, not offer their drug. The FTC estimates that these legal bribes cost Americans $3.5 billion every year in avoidable drug costs. Number 3, the rise of pharmacy benefit managers. PBMs act as middlemen between drug makers and insurance companies and employers. They negotiate what's called rebates for favorable placement on insurance lists. So because PBMs often keep a percentage of a rebate, they get to keep some of that money. They actually have an incentive to choose a drug with a $10,000 list price and a $5,000 rebate over a drug that costs $2,000 with a $1,000 rebate. This is why it makes sense for pharma to price their drugs very high initially. Number 2, Medicare's negotiating power. For over 20 years, the federal government, the single largest buyer of drugs, was legally not allowed to negotiate prices for Medicare. Only in 2026 do we see the first real effects of price negotiations under new legislation. But the decades of government hands-off policy set a global ceiling for what the industry could charge, which actually leads us to number 1. Number 1, no central price regulation. The number 1 factor influencing high drug prices in the US is structural. The US has no central authority to set or cap drug prices across the system. Unlike other high-income nations that treat medicine like a regulated utility, US pricing is determined through a decentralized network of private negotiations. And in this environment, the drug price is rarely tied to what it actually costs to make the drug. If you found this video interesting, you'd like to see more like it in the future, please consider subscribing for more. This is Tyler Dutchover. Thanks for watching.